Most of you by now know that I work at VIP Mortgage. A lot of you may not know why or how I got there. For us as LOs, we have a lot of options. And for me, VIP Mortgage was the perfect fit and the best place, in my opinion, to work. So if you have any questions about VIP Mortgage as an LO, or if you are a consumer and you're looking for a mortgage, you can reach out to me on social media, or you can reach out to anybody else that you may know at VIP Mortgage. And our website is vipmtginc.com. Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Talk with Ryan Madrid. First of all, I always like to introduce my partners over here. Trisha Madrid, my sister, she handles all my social media and the production along with her son and my nephew, Trey. Dylan, who isn't here today, he fills in for Trey when Trey's not in town. Trey is a film guy, so he's been doing stuff in LA and Atlanta and stuff like that. So, and thank you to VIP Mortgage for allowing us to have this awesome space to do this podcast. We really appreciate it. So today's a special day, special guest, co-founding and managing partner and CEO of Neighborhood Ventures. And we have Jamison Manwaring. Did I say that right?
You said it right. It's like, what is that man wearing?
Oh, damn. That would have been way easier. It's Jamison Manwaring, so co-founder and managing partner and CEO of Neighborhood Ventures. So really cool idea. But before we get into what it actually does, I just want to dive into a little bit about your history, because when you go through your profile, it's pretty impressive. And we talked a little bit before. Last week, we had a really impressive one too. So, but you're equally as impressive. So I'm not going to go too deep in your childhood, but you're from Idaho. You went to the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. And then from there, you went on to New York. So talk a little bit about your experience in going to University of Utah, and then what kind of led you to going to New York.
Yeah, I think maybe the right word for my resume is it's eclectic. It's kind of all over the place. The folks that I've heard on your podcast before are probably a lot more impressive. But no. Yeah, grew up in small town in Idaho. You know, my mom grew up on a potato farm. Surprise, surprise. You know, in right. Idaho, and I spent a lot of time there in the summers. Ended up at University of Utah in Salt Lake City, and just like a lot of us in our early 20s trying to figure out what do we want to do with our lives, I decided I want to go to Wall Street. I really want to understand finance. There's so many opportunities within finance if you have a good finance understanding. You know, Warren Buffett was an inspiration to me, and I realized that in University of Utah decided to study finance after looking at all the other options. You know, usually your first few years you're doing your generals and trying to wade your way through it. And I said I wanted to get to Wall Street, and everyone there said, well, maybe you should pivot and right. do some other things, because it's very difficult to get to Wall Street from a non-core school. Right. The core schools where they recruit from are typically the Ivy Leagues and maybe a couple others. And they hire a couple hundred, each firm hires a couple hundred interns every year. And once you get an internship there while you're in college, then that's basically how you get a full-time job, you know, after you right. graduate. So spent my college years, paid my own way through college. I sold security alarms door to door, which is a big thing in Utah. There's actually a big industry up there. Former Mormon missionaries, as I was.
Isn't pest control a big one too?
That it started with pest control. My older brothers did pest control, and it kind of evolved to ADT style home security. Right. And you can make more per cell with the home security. So when I'm the youngest of 8 kids, and so my older brothers all did pest control. But when it was my turn, it was security alarms, and that's what got me through college. Okay. The worst job, for me, I'm more of an introvert. I can be an extrovert when I need to be, but you get dropped off at noon and you knock on doors till 9 p.m. all day of the summer, and you get picked up at dark, and you hope you sold a few security alarm contracts during that period of time.
That sounds brutal.
The good thing is, after doing that, everything was so much easier.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of Mormons that had to do that are incredible salespeople because they have zero fear.
Yep. That's why when people ask about going on, Mormon mission, I think that they're so valuable for that. And when I started doing it, I had already done that as Mormon missionary, knocking on doors and getting used to rejection. And there's some maturing that you go through when you're talking to people, and also just getting to know people. Yeah. When you knock on someone's door and they open it, and you realize how different people are and how you should talk to people differently and understand them and listen to them and all those good kind of sales skills. And so that translated over to the doors. We call it summer sales. Yeah. And you're able to make some good money knocking on doors, but you're counting down the days at the end of the year. You're so excited to get back to school. Right. So
did you do it just during the summer, or did you do it
just during the summer? Then you recruit your friends the rest of the year when you get back to school. Okay. So the first year I did it by myself. The next year I brought 3 or 4 of my friends. And the last year I was a manager, and I had a whole office of 20 guys. And then I was done. Burnt out. But,
hey, Jamison. Yeah. Where did you do your mission?
Eastern Canada. Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Canada.
Okay. Trey went to school in Toronto.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Toronto Film School.
Yeah, I love Canada, and I hated fish before I got there, and after everyone offers you fish, fresh lobster. It's a whole different world out there. So
nice.
I actually really loved my Mormon mission 2-year experience. Yeah,
it seems like it's one of the really good things I think about the teachings, I guess. It's like you get sent away and you go to do this, and it may not sound appealing to everybody, but it seems like you definitely come back a better person. Definitely, like you said, your interpersonal communication skills are just and if you go to a country like, Ecuador or something, you come back speaking another language, and, I had a friend recently, their kid just got, I think he was Santa Barbara or something like that. And he grew up in San Francisco. He's like, really? I gotta go like my neighbor everywhere.
My fear was, getting called to Salt Lake City, being from Idaho. Right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so at University in Utah, okay, I'm gonna fast forward then. So you ended up going to New York, and you were working with Barclay, right?
Yeah. So I spent the junior year. JetBlue had a special deal. At the time, the red-eye flights were like $199 round trip from Salt Lake to JFK. So every Thursday night for about 6 weeks, I got on the flight, would leave at 11:30 Utah time p.m., try to get a little sleep in the plane. You'd arrive in New York about 6 a.m. I'd go check in at a hostel. Jeez. And, because I had no money. I had a little bit of money from the summer sales, but it's long gone by that time. Right. Then Friday, you try to line up appointments with people, just kind of hustling. There were some Utah alumni who later go on to get their MBA at some Ivy League schools that are on Wall Street. So I networked and found them. And through the course of that, I ended up meeting a great guy, Chad, I can't think of his last name, but he was at Barclays. And we would go for what we call an info session. So this was something that I learned. Instead of reaching out to somebody if you want to network and saying, hey, I'm interested in a job, you just say, hey, I'd love to sit down for 15 minutes for coffee and understand more about your business. And it's, especially if you're a student, most people will say, sure, I'd be happy to do that. So you try to go have 4 or 5 meetings, and I ended up meeting some great folks out there, and they helped me after we get to know them. And, I'm asking about their job. And then by the end of the conversation, I'm like, well, so are you interested in this? And I'd say, yeah, I actually am. I think I'd love to do an internship. And then they do that on their own rather than showing up and saying, hey, I want an internship. Give me an internship. It's more of trying to build build a relationship with them. And then that ended up coming. And so I learned a lot through that whole experience and ended up getting an internship on the trading floor at Barclays. all the investment banks have these large trading floors where it's, obviously the classic stock trading floor doesn't exist anymore at the stock exchange. If you go there, that's not what happens anymore. It's all electronic.
Not the tickets and it's not all that stuff anymore.
Yeah, right? The movies, from the 70s and before, that's how it was. Now it's all electronic. But on the trading floors at the banks, it's actually really lively. There's about 300-400 people on the floor, all talking back and forth. And I thought that's where I wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks in the internship, I was not enjoying it.
Yeah.
Ended up, doing the best I could, finishing it out, and then by getting that internship under my belt, I kind of leveraged it and pivoted over to Goldman Sachs instead of being on the trading floor to be up a couple floors where you do the research, equity research, and it's a quiet atmosphere. You're more digging into companies, trying to understand their competitive position, their financial statements, their strategy, and I really loved that. I really enjoyed that type of work.
That's awesome. So that I was going to ask, it was like a guy coming from Utah, how does that happen? But it's you built relationships and you networked with people that had similar backgrounds maybe. And so being at Barclays, did you know somebody over at Goldman, or did you just...
Once you get an internship on Wall Street your junior year, they call it your golden ticket.
Okay.
And usually you can get a job after that internship.
Okay.
You still have to kind of interview well and all that sort of thing. But I knew Goldman was a place I would really love to work at. I actually interviewed at Goldman for an internship and I didn't get it.
Okay.
The year that I got Barclays, and I was bummed and hated them. I'm never working in this place. Next year I go do it again and they like me that time. And I was
Well, you're a little more seasoned.
Yeah.
I mean, so for people listening that don't know, but I'm assuming, I hate to assume, but I'm going to assume that everybody knows, but Goldman Sachs is like the gold standard of where, like you said before, it's like where every Yale kid, Harvard, Princeton that wants to be in finance, I mean, that's typically where they pull from, right? So, I mean, that is like the elite status of if you want to be in finance and you get a job at Goldman Sachs, it's like you think that you just got a job, for the Yankees or whatever, right? If you're into the Yankees. But so when I saw that, I was like, wow.
Yeah, and that's the environment it is. So showing up there and thinking you're pretty smart, pretty ambitious, and everyone else there is the exact same way. And it was intimidating for a while. It made me feel like it definitely made me rise up and want to be my best. And I loved it for that. You're working with the great thing is they have what's called a flat hierarchical structure. So you work with the very senior people on a team of 3 or 4 people. There's a really senior person, and then they have a few junior people. And so you're interacting with these really high-level people that are partners at Goldman, making a lot of money,
right.
Having dinner regularly with the CEOs at Apple, Tim Cook, and
wow.
And they're doing interacting with them all the time. And then I'm sitting there working on that team, helping build the report. And it was a really I knew the work I was doing was the highest level work I had ever. It was a little higher level work than knocking on doors selling security alarms.
Right.
And then our reports, go to the hedge funds and mutual funds, and then they would help them base their decision whether they wanted to make an investment or not. So it was great exposure. One of the companies that we worked with was LifeLock. Mm-hmm. In 2012, LifeLock was a company based in Tempe. The CEO, genius guy, Todd Davis, friend of mine, and founder, he was being interviewed on CNBC, and he said, "I'm so confident in LifeLock service," and this was when they were just starting, "that I'm going to give my social security number on air because I know I will not have identity theft."
Right.
And so he gave his social security number on air live, and the company blew up. And,
really?
Yeah, and they went from having a few thousand subscribers to hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Wow. So they were one of the first projects I worked on, LifeLock, and we'll come back to that later. But I got to know him through the IPO process, him and the CFO, and then later they ended up offering me a job to come out and run their investor relations here.
So let's talk a little bit before we move there, but let's talk a little bit about working at Goldman because we talked off air. about like how great of like a culture that place is, and I think that people may think it's just like a cutthroat, which obviously it is, but their like motto and vision and mission is like way different than I ever thought they would be.
Yeah, you know, it was such an eye opener for me coming from Utah and Idaho, and I got to New York, and so a little bit of kind of a personal side was I was growing up Mormon. I was planning to and wanting to do the Mormon path, which is typically get married at a young age, as all my brothers did.
Yeah.
Start having babies. That's what I wanted to do. But I was also gay. So it started posing.
I knew that.
Yeah. I told you that. I gave that away. Yeah. But at the time, no one knew that but me. So I was through all of college. I wasn't out. And in college, I was dating some guys, but it was not public.
Right.
I had told my family a little prior to college, but we kept it in the family because I basically said I was bisexual at the time.
Yeah.
Which there are bisexual people out there, but it's also a little softer approach than, hey, I'm gay.
Right.
It's I'm bisexual and I might be with a guy or a girl, right?
It's the transition.
And there's not to say there aren't some bisexual people, but for me,
Right.
I did benefit from
a
little softer landing.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So I'm like, so there might be some feelings there for guys, but I'll ultimately end up with a woman and everything will be fine. You'll still have your grandkids and it's easier for them. So they, through college, I wasn't out through college, and I can play it off pretty well that I'm a straight guy because I do a lot of straight guy stuff, sports and all that kind of stuff. I just don't like women, so
Right.
that's the difference. I love women. I don't want to date women. So,
Right.
but I can play it off pretty well. But I did pretend to date women through college too. You figure that's the best cover.
This is great.
So it's Pride Month, right? So it's June.
Love it.
So I get to Goldman, and I didn't really have any plans of coming out anytime soon. And I realize that they immediately they start sending emails about they have a LGBT support affinity group, meets once a month for drinks. There's a bunch of senior members of the company who are out, gay, married to their spouses, and it opened me up to a whole new world. And then they do a lot of training about how to understand LGBT people. I went to one, as a straight guy.
Yeah.
and I learned so much about myself. It was kind of it was a place where you could tell not only was it supportive, but it was affirming, and there's a big difference. You can grow up in a family, it's like, okay, yeah, you're gay, we're not going to talk about it, but it's not a problem, but we're not going to talk about it.
Right.
It's different when you're in an affirming place where they're like, oh, you're gay, that's beautiful, that's amazing, you have certain talents that maybe other people don't have, but we're going to affirm it rather than just, and they are an affirming place. And what was actually the transition, the big turning point for me, they sent me an email, they sent it to everybody, and it was a survey, and they wanted to ask employees who were LGBT how it felt to work there, if they felt affirmed. And it was kind of an opt-in, opt-out. If you're straight, you don't need to reply to the email.
Right.
And I'm sitting there going, okay, well, if I reply to this email, the cat's going to be out of the bag, and my manager is going to know that I'm gay, who I was close with, and he's a great guy. But I didn't necessarily want my whole, everybody to know. But then it was like, if I don't reply to this email, and the reality is that all the things that they had done for me had helped me so much, I wanted them to know.
Yeah.
I wanted them to know that it was great to work there as a gay person. So I said, you know what, I'm going to fill out this survey and let them know I appreciate it, because I did.
Yeah.
So I filled it out and sent it in, and then and I knew my manager was going to find out. And a few days later, I got to the point where I said I'm going to let my family know and that I'm going to come out publicly. And I did on YouTube because I have a big extended family. And so I recorded a YouTube video. I didn't want to have to tell all my aunts and uncles individually, but there's
a lot.
There's a lot,
Yeah.
and it's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
Getting into all that. But I also wanted them to all hear it from me.
Yeah.
instead of through the game telephone where, one aunt tells one other aunt,
Yeah.
I wanted them to hear it from me and have to kind of see me and have to kind of deal with it.
Yeah.
Growing up, I didn't know any gay people, so
Right.
I wanted people to know, look, we do exist. I'm in your family, and I want you to see me. So did it in a video. It ended up being one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I wish I had done it earlier. All the fears you have once it actually happens, you realize those were in your head. People were a lot better than I ever thought.
So how did you do it? Did you just distribute it like via email, or how did you?
I actually posted on Facebook.
Okay.
Recorded at YouTube, posted on Facebook. Ended up, I thought I really made it for about 200 or 300 people in my life, college friends, mission friends, family.
Yeah.
I just thought they'd see it and watch it, and then a lot of them ended up sharing it. And it's not really it's a kind of serious, somber video. As I watch it, I'm kind of like, I feel sorry for that guy, honestly. But a lot of people shared it, and so it ended up. There ended up being some press around it because kind of this gay Mormon comes out, and NPR National, out of Washington D.C. I did an interview with them a couple weeks later with my brother. And just about coming out as a gay person, and particularly Mormon, and having support from my family, which was a big part of it. And so it ended up being a really beautiful experience. And even though I had a lot of fears and emotions around that time, as I look back on it, it's one of the coolest times in seeing how people, when you get away from the political side of it or those other things, they just care about other people.
Totally.
And that's a beautiful thing about it.
I just got like a little bit of my hair stood on my arms.
Yeah, I'm a little like.
No, that was super cool. No, that was I got the chills kind of. So when you left, so let's go back to LifeLock then. So you met him and he said, "Come out here and work with me."
Yeah. So that was in 2012.
Okay.
And we covered them as a company for 3 years, and I wrote research on them, and they kind of became one of my favorite companies. So a lot of the hedge funds and mutual funds, when they would want to invest in Goldman Sachs, they would talk to me because they knew I knew it well. And I was ready. Fast forward to 2015, I was ready to get out of New York. It's tough when you grow up in the West.
Yeah.
To go back east, and there's just so much more room out here.
Right.
More recreation, and I'm just a West guy. Even though I loved the energy of New York, I was looking to get back out here, and I knew they were in Tempe, which was really unique because I have a brother that lives here, went to med school here, and I have another brother who had moved here, and both families were here, and so that was a draw too. I knew I couldn't go back to Idaho,
Right.
But
right.
There's a lot of skiing there, but there's not a lot else for me there besides family and skiing. And
Tempe's a great spot.
So Tempe's a great spot, and I love the weather, love the lifestyle here. And so I actually reached out to them, and I said, hey, we know each other well. If you ever have an opportunity where you'd want to bring someone in to do investor relations internally, which most companies end up doing once they go public. And the CFO emailed me back, and he said, actually, your timing's great. Come on out and visit. And a few months later, they offered me a position and moved out fall of 2015.
Okay. And then how long after you moved out here did they sell to
It was
Symantec?
about 18 months.
Okay.
So when I joined the company, stock price was $8 a share, and this was the reason why it was one of my favorite companies. The whole Social Security ploy and marketing technique, which really built the company, got them in a little bit of trouble with the FTC. And so the FTC sued them. The stock was about $20 a share, and the FTC sued them in late 2014, and the stock went down to $7 a share. And so I started talking about it a lot, saying, "Hey, this is a big deal with the FTC, but once this gets cleared up, this thing's going back to 20." Mm-hmm. And it was at that time that I reached out to them, and they said, "Hey, your timing's good with this whole FTC thing. It would be good to bring you in, help us get over this," and joined the company, moved out, and then about 6 months later, we settled with the FTC. Stock immediately went back up to the high teens, and then 6 months later, we were acquired for $24 a share by Symantec.
Wow.
So our investors had a really good, and me personally, getting stock options at $8 a share and then selling for 24 18 months later, it ended up being a great outcome.
So then you're like, so what should I do now? I can do anything I want.
Yeah.
Basically, right? So is that when you started? So there's a gap in time though. So in between when you started Neighborhood Ventures, what were you doing?
So we did when I was in New York, I bought a 10-unit commercial building on the side.
Oh, okay.
Actually in Idaho, renovated it. And I really loved real estate. All my time in New York and working on Wall Street kind of just drew me even more to real estate. The stability, the fact that it's tangible. And so I started investing in it on the side. And once LifeLock got acquired, I decided not to go back into kind of corporate. And I wanted to do more of those types of projects, commercial real estate projects. I wanted more freedom, wanted more flexibility. And I knew with the internet that I'm not a guy that spends a lot of time at the golf course. And that's where you have, if you want to start being a commercial real estate developer, you have to start building relationships with high net worth folks.
Yep.
And I knew that wasn't really me. I'm more of a tech guy, and I thought, what if we could do this but do it online and take these potential real estate investments and development, put them online and open it up to investors online? Because a lot of people would rather invest online nowadays than sit down with somebody, a financial advisor or what have you. And you might have to get a lot more of those investors online, but you don't. It's a different way of doing the business. So I was drawn to that, and new laws had been passed around crowdfunding, where you could raise money online for these projects with people who aren't wealthy folks. Because just to step back a little bit, the government does have a lot of rules around investing, and most commercial real estate investments are only open to accredited investors who are wealthy investors. You either have to have a net worth of $1 million or more, or income of $200,000 a year, $300,000 a year if you're married. So it's about 1% of the population.
And that's the definition of accredited?
That's right. Yep. Most deals, most real estate syndications of apartment buildings, commercial real estate, are only open to accredited investors. And until crowdfunding laws were passed in 2012, they were only open to accredited investors. Right. So when part of the Jobs Act, President Obama signed the law that opened up crowdfunding, and I knew that had happened, and so some of these things kind of all came together for me, and I had the idea I want to create a crowdfunding company for real estate projects, and that's what I wanted. That's my next gig.
Yeah. Had anybody else done this yet? Are there any out there besides Neighborhood Venture? Okay.
A bunch of companies had started right after the Jobs Act had been passed. They had got a bunch of VC money. So one of the most famous ones, Realty Shares, they had raised about $80 million, and they're now closed. They're now defunct. There were one of the first ones called Fundrise still exists, but there was this idea that after that crowdfunding law was passed, there was going to be kind of a bum rush to online investing, and it was going to be this huge new industry. It ended up being okay, but it wasn't this huge change. And so by the time I got interested in it, some of those companies had already failed, and I was looking at it as, okay, I'm not trying to create the next Google or anything. I just want to create a cool company that does something different. Maybe it's just always in Arizona. We build a core base of a couple hundred investors, and we do more and more projects. I didn't know exactly how it would look, but I knew I didn't want to do corporate anymore.
Right, yeah.
I was trading out of that. And I ended up that summer doing a project in Rocky Point. It's a house conversion. I converted it to a 7-unit Airbnb in Las Conchas.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I did that that summer after LifeLock got acquired, thinking maybe I'll move to Mexico and just live there the rest of my life and live on the beach.
Yeah. So wait, you turned a house into 7 units?
Yeah, the house was built. When it was built, the rooms are all separate with separate entrances.
Okay, cool.
So the minute I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's a perfect Airbnb."
So little apartment building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically a little apartment building, and it's right on the beach. A beautiful beach. but it needed a lot of work. It was
Yeah.
built in 1983. It had no renovation. So so I moved down there that summer and went after that project. And through the course of that and that summer, I met John Kobierowski, who's now the co-founder of Neighborhood Ventures. And
Did you meet him down there?
no, didn't meet him down.
I was gonna say, that'd be cool.
I was looking at a building here to potentially buy before I did the Rocky Point one.
Okay.
And the broker, I told him I wanted to do crowdfunding, real estate crowdfunding company. And he said, well, my boss talks about that all the time. And I said, well, who's your boss? And he said, John Kobierowski. And I just jotted the name down. And then I went home and did some Google searches. And John's like a really well-known commercial broker here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
I sent him an email, and he immediately replied back, and we started talking. And we both wanted to do the same thing.
Yeah.
He's an expert in real estate, and I'm a investment guy.
Yeah.
And so we decided to partner up and do it together, and we launched Neighborhood Ventures the fall of that year. So LifeLock was bought out February 2017, and we started Neighborhood Ventures in the fall of 2017.
Okay. So in what year, did you guys have your first actual deal in 2017, or was it 2018?
We started it at the end of 2017, December, and it was a small little Tempe 10-unit apartment building.
Wait, back up. John, so his main commercial space was apartments, right? Okay.
Primarily apartments.
Okay.
So his company here, ABI Multifamily, they sell more apartments than anybody in Elton, Arizona. They've consistently been number one by CoStar, and he's been in the industry for 30 years. So he found the deal.
He's an OG.
He's an OG.
Yeah.
A little bit too much of an OG because he just knows everything about, he's a great partner. Especially for me, he can focus on one area and I can focus on another area. So first project was a little project, and we thought, okay, we got to raise $500,000 from investors. This will probably take about 3 or 4 weeks. and we had done some marketing. We got a little bit of PR, and after about 3 months, we had raised like $100,000.
Wow. Why do you think that is?
No, everyone's like, well, okay, we get you guys have a background in this, but you've never done this before.
Yeah. And you don't really have a huge network here. At that point, you didn't have a huge network here. John, but you would think that he was going after a whole different demographic than he's ever gone after.
So we made a little rule between us that we're not going to go to our rich friends.
Yeah.
We wanted to build a business
that
was a real business, and it was kind of a test. Like, can we take this idea, go out to the market, and will people come in and invest in smaller increments? So our minimum investment we decided would be $1,000.
Wow.
And we needed to raise $500,000, and we figured people would probably invest a little more than that. And our averages end up being $5,000 is our average. So we needed about 100 investors. But the other part of it is, just because someone's interested in what you're doing, they believe in it, it's actually hard to get somebody to write a check.
Totally.
Even for $1,000. In fact, sometimes it's easier to write a check for $25,000 if you out of your IRA than $1,000 for some people, in some circumstances, because that might be somebody, that $1,000 might mean more to them. And so it was hard. It's an educational process. So we continued to do a lot of events. We had one event with 150 people at it.
It was like workshops. You come and speak, and then would you go over the whole IRA thing, a self-directed IRA, all the options they could do?
We'd touch on that, but then we'd talk a lot about this project and what we thought we could do with it. We were going to renovate it, why it was such a good project in the area that it was in. And we were sitting in a meeting. So at this time, we were going to pay all of our investors. Everybody was going to be treated the same, including the company, in what's called common equity. So if the project does great, maybe investors would have got a 14 or 15% return, annual return. If the project didn't do so great, it might be 2-3%.
Right.
Just kind of dependent on the project. And then we're in a meeting of 150 people, and we told all the investors this, and we said we do have one investor who's going to come in with a couple $100,000. We're going to pay them preferred equity at 10%, And one of the investors said, well, what's preferred equity? And we said that gets paid first. So that's kind of in the capital stack of things that get paid first.
First
debt,
position.
First position. So debt's always first, and then preferred equity, then common equity. And the investor said, well, can I have the preferred equity? Because this common equity thing, you're telling me it could be up, it could be down. I want to do the preferred equity. If I could do that, I'll invest today.
Yeah.
And then another investor said, yeah, I'm interested in that too.
Right.
And it was almost like this room had happened, and we kind of look at each other and we're like, yeah, we could do preferred equity for you folks too. And we ended up going and restructuring it. And this was after about 4 months. We had raised $200,000, and instead of doing it the way where everybody was going to get common equity so the project could be up or down, we paid everybody 12% preferred. Wow. And that was the deal. And if we did better than 12% as the managing partners, then great, we'll take those profits. But they're getting the first 12% of the profits.
Yeah.
And we changed it, we tweaked it, we sent out the updated offering, and we ended up funding it in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And since then, and we're just next week launching our 10th project. We've done them all at a 12% annual preferred return for our investors, and folks get it and they love it. It works well for us. We know once we get them paid at their 12%, then all of the upside could be profit to the company. But we got to get that done first in order to get any profit.
So is the common investor still there, or is this only preferred now?
The common is held by us.
Okay.
And all of our investors are preferred.
Okay, cool. So even the $1,000 guy, 5,000, they're preferred 12%. Yep. Okay, cool. So all right, so that one's done. So then your next one, was it that fast? Then you raised money super quick.
Yeah, the second one we raised in 60 days. Okay. We raised $600,000. Then the third one was an 8-unit Airbnb in South Scottsdale, and we raised that in 3 weeks. So that was really cool.
So that one's been up and running for a couple of years now. Then.
Yeah, and we've already sold that one. So we renovated it.
Okay.
We renovated that one. We bought it for 130 a unit. We put in about 40,000 a unit to renovate it, and we ended up selling it late last year for about 240 a unit.
Wow.
And so all our investors got paid out on it.
So say you wanted to keep it in your portfolio, so you refinance it. Do the investors have the opportunity do you pay them out, or do they have the opportunity to stay in with you?
We do refinance our debt.
Okay.
Because our initial loan, when we get it, includes some renovation components to help us cover renovations. But we refinance the debt, but we end up selling the buildings in either 2 or 3 years. We don't refinance them and keep them, and then everyone just gets paid out in that time period. We get that question a lot, though. Well, if this is a great building, why don't you just want to keep it?
Yeah.
And the reason why we don't is that's just not our business. We end up selling these buildings to people who want turnkey projects where they just own it and collect cash.
Yeah.
We have a crew. We have a renovation crew. We're looking for deals where we can go renovate, do value add, and then we'll sell them. And that's just our sweet spot right now. Maybe over time we'll evolve into other things, but that's what we do well right now.
So does John find the properties, and then you do like the cost analysis? You underwrite it basically?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so like watching the videos, Rocky seems like she's a huge part of the deal. Okay.
Yeah, she is. So yeah, Rocky, John and I founded the company, and then Rocky was one of our early investors.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And she's a great personality, and then we started talking about some like design ideas, and I saw she had a big following on social media with design, and I was like, hey, we need to bring Rocky in, because John was doing the design at that point. And he has a decent eye, I will say.
He's
sometimes
done so many, right? So he knows what people like, probably, right?
And that's part of it, is he knows from an apartment standpoint the types of colors and stuff to use and materials, and he's great with that. But we needed another eye to make these properties really have some character. And people will pay for a property that has cool colors, cool textiles, and they'll rent and they'll pay a bit more for that than the bland one, that even if it's new. And so we added Rocky to our team, and she adds some good spice to the bland conversations that John and I have, so we needed that. And she's our designer, and she also is part of our investor relations team. And so together we go out and look at properties. We pass on a lot of properties. When we decide we want to move forward on one, all three of us agree on it. She brings the design component. John finds the deal. He's also really good at, he manages our property manager. So we have a third property manager who helps lease it up.
Okay.
And he manages our crew that does the renovation. So he does a ton. I focus on fundraising.
Yeah.
And all our financial reporting and accounting once we've started a project, making sure all of that's tight. Yeah, as an investor, that's such an important thing. And we try to do a few things. We got to make sure we do what we say we're going to do.
Yeah.
And we always try to stay ahead of the investor, so that the last thing you want as an investor is to make an investment and not hear back from the company for a while, and you're like, what's going on with that investment I made? We want to reach out to you, send you correspondence before you have even thought of that. So we try to stay ahead. And our investors really are more engaged with our projects because they can see our videos, our updates.
Yeah.
And that's what I focus on, is that side of the business and really having great, investor experiences.
Yeah. So I'm going to get into just a little bit of the marketing side of things kind of as we wrap, because I think that everybody can go onto, what's your website?
It's neighborhood.ventures.
Neighborhood.ventures. And obviously they're on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and
YouTube.
Instagram. And then YouTube, there's
amazing.
there's a ton of videos on YouTube to find out all the information you could ever want to see about what's going on, which is super cool. So whose idea was it to do basically like a mini reality show, right?
I think it was, we were out at a property, and John's funny because we're talking, and all of a sudden he has a ladder and he's out up on the roof, and I'm, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I got to check this AC, seems a little loose. And I'm like, he's one of those guys that gets a hammer and he starts going crazy. So it's kind of like, maybe we should start capturing some of his craziness, and just showing people what goes into this.
Yeah.
And along with the design component, and everyone likes to see a makeover of a property from something that doesn't look great to a new beautiful project. So we brought that component in, and then we built a YouTube series around it, and we're on our 16th episode that comes out with our next project, and it's been really fun. It's fun to share it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great marketing tool for sure. It's funny, we have the same sort of, I wouldn't say issue, but I look at some of your videos and it has maybe 1,000 views, and then there's one video of you just talking, writing on the board. It was 8,800 views, right?
Right.
And you just never know who's what it's doing for you, but you only need a few people to watch it to really go, okay, this is something I want to be involved in.
Yep.
And as you guys grow, because they're really well done, right? You guys spend some money on these things.
Yeah.
It's like you have a camera crew with you at all times.
Yeah.
During these projects.
And I think the big thing, we get all our new investors just word of mouth, and a lot of our investors are happy to share those videos with their friends.
Yeah. That's cool.
So you put out a good product like that, and we do put a lot of focus on it, then they end up sharing it a lot more than if it's kind of just put together.
Yeah.
So is that you or Rocky that oversees the production of those?
So we both work on it together, but I have a friend who makes documentary films. So this is a little insight. Guys who make documentary films, they make their money in about 20% of the year. And then the rest of the year, they're kind of twiddling their thumbs. And so I started talking to him. I said, hey, and you have any downtime? He said, yeah, sometimes I'm super busy for stretches, but then I have a lot of downtime. And I snagged him, and he's been the one that's filmed those and done all of those.
You can tell he's great.
He's
good.
Yeah.
Trey's
so
really freaking good too, by the way. And he's been working on a little documentary for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to be doing the work for us, doing it.
And it's an art, and it's a great industry that for people like Trey that have an ability to do it. We just need more. There's going to be more and more of a need for that, and there's a big difference between doing it really well and how I do it if I were to. So
right. I mean, you can even just tell the beginning of the videos with the drone coming up and just all there's the B-roll stuff and all that stuff. Super. It's really well done.
I loved your workout at the Mona Planet.
Good, you saw that. Yeah.
Where is it? CrossFit with water?
Yeah, it's cross swim.
Cross swim.
That's great. And I will say, that one might have the most views.
Wow.
If you check it on YouTube, that we've crossed over 100,000 on that one.
Oh yeah.
And
You should
so
take your shirt off more.
It's all the burpees. So moving forward. So the podcast Kiss My Assets.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so that's just another thing. You're like, all right, we've already doing the videos. We're doing this basically a little show. You're documenting all the projects, and then you're like, now we need to do a podcast too. And the podcast, like, what was the theory behind like why we needed to do this?
So just a little longer form format, similar to this, where you can have a general conversation. So typically, if you go back to how commercial real estate is typically funded, and we've talked about the country club, or meeting folks of high net worth. Before they'll write a check to you, they want to get to know you. Mm-hmm. They want to spend some time with you. They want to see what your personality's like. We can't do that with our investors, but through media and platforms like podcasts and our video, we want to spend as much time as we can for folks to get to know us, feel comfortable with us. And so the podcast gives us that format that's a little bit more free-flowing. We get into more detail than you can on video. And, some folks love podcasts, some folks love video, so we do them both.
Yeah, it's like an informative, like you go over like numbers and it's like exactly how the project's being done. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, that's basically where we started this one too. Just not for the information side of things, but just more of like getting in front of more people.
Yep.
And then just having cool people on, just telling their stories and, being raw, authentic like we did today.
Yeah, and if you create great stuff like you guys are, that's a big value to people. People, me included, I love podcasts that are inspirational. Yeah. Local folks, that stuff is powerful.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And so as far as like somebody getting involved, like we said, go to the website. For me personally, like I watched some of the projects and I wasn't like looking at the dates and I'm like, I want to do that one. I want to be a part of that one.
Right.
Because you guys do a really good job. I mean, obviously, especially the returns are good. Right now, it's incredible market for especially those like 10, 20 unit apartment complexes. I mean, you guys are murdering it. And everybody who's doing apartments right now are killing it. So it's really cool though, because it gives somebody the opportunity, like Trisha, myself, Trey, you get somebody that's like 21 years old. They're like, hey, I want to get started in this. How do I get started in this business? Well, I have $1,000, this is how I'm going to roll. I'm going to start it off. And so it's an incredible idea, and it's awesome that you guys are doing it.
And we have school teachers, we have ASU students, we have postal
Tell
carriers.
the story of the postal guy. Dude, that's a real quick story. And then we'll
that's a great story.
Well, I will say, as any company that starts up, you're going to have your tough times, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like our tough time was probably about a year and a half ago, and right around COVID, at the beginning of COVID, you're trying to figure out how is this all going to work out. So it was more like a year ago, and we had an open house planned, and it was a tough time for us as we're trying to navigate COVID, and then we were still a new company, and you have so many challenges as a new company anyway. And we, so I went to our open house, and I was kind of I felt the business, maybe this isn't what I want to do for a long time. Frankly, I was like, you can make a lot of money in just working at a company.
Yeah.
And why did I give that up?
Right.
We're sitting here with COVID in a new company that hadn't generated any money yet. And we did this open house, and there was a guy there was a postal carrier, and it was for our investors. So we had about 50 investors there. And this guy had his uniform on. Oh, cool. And I went up to him. I said, "So, are you an investor?" And he said, "I am." He said, "I love what you guys are doing. I never thought I'd be able to own a project, be a part of a project like this. And I've invested a few $1,000s in it because I've worked in this neighborhood for 20 years, and I know where it's going. I've seen where it's going. And if you think of a postal carrier, walk in a neighborhood, they know more about that neighborhood than anybody."
Yeah.
And it was so gratifying to me. My grandpa, after being in World War II, was a postal carrier for 40 years, and finances were always tight as a postal carrier, and he worked hard. That's hard work.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying we're changing this guy's life, not saying that, but I was happy that he was excited about investing with us, and it made me realize why we were doing what we were doing, and that was to reach more people and give them the opportunity to own these assets that are good assets. They're steady, they pay good cash flow, they feel better than investing in the market that is such a roller coaster. Some people just aren't cut out for that, and this just gives them another opportunity. And this was a guy that really that impacted me when I actually needed it at that time as a founder of the company.
Well, that's cool. And then things turned shortly after that too. So and you're here.
Yes.
And now the company exists.
So the last year has been great.
That's awesome. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming and doing this, because this is like why we kind of do it, right? It's fun to hear the stories, but this is a different thing that we haven't done yet. I had never heard of this before until we started talking to you guys about it.
Yeah, we have to give a shout out to Elena.
Yeah, again. Elena, thank you so much for.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's great.
Incredible.
We tried to hire her. She won't take us. That's for real. She's like, I can't. I don't have any room in my life or any more people. But shout out to her, and again, thank you so much. Go to neighborhood.ventures or neighborhood. It's just neighborhood.ventures. Neighborhood.ventures. And then if you want to learn about this, like go online and go to YouTube, because they'll talk about the IRAs and how you can use self-directed IRAs. You can use that kind of money. It's a tax benefit. You can talk about they talk about a lot of stuff, anything. I mean, basically just watching you do it on the whiteboard or on the glass, it's a great indication of showing how, the money you can make versus going out and buying, put it in a savings account or put it in buying stocks or going out and buying bonds. So you do a really good job in that, and the fact that the background that you have, putting the two of you together, well, three of you really, but I mean it's like, where else are you going to find two people that are that achieved in life doing a business together? So people feel comfortable. That's somebody I would feel comfortable with, knowing that the finance guy came from Goldman Sachs at one point and helped LifeLock go public. So again, check them out. Thank you so much, Jamison. Appreciate it, man.
This has been fun. Thanks for inviting us, and great to meet you guys and your team.
For sure. Trish, you want to do one little rapid fire, or do you think?
Yes, I will do one rapid fire. Sorry, I totally.
We like closing. We usually do this. It's like her favorite thing to do. This shows me how intrigued she's been in this one.
Yeah, I've totally
because she's
absorbed. I hardly talk too. And I actually have only taken like 4 photos, so it's a good sign. Okay. Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram?
Instagram.
And why?
You don't have to read anything. You just see pictures. Sometimes we need that.
Yeah.
I prefer that.
I'm sure you read enough all day long.
Who manages your the business Instagram?
Rocky.
Rocky does. She does an excellent job.
Thank you.
By the way. All of your media is incredible. Does she come from like a marketing
She's very self-taught, I would say.
She's incredible. I aspire to be her.
Yeah, and she has a big following on Instagram that she just built on her own around design.
We follow her.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. I'm going to ask you one more. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I am a night owl, and I try to be a morning person.
So do you work out in the morning or do you work out at night?
Usually at noon. Or night. Yeah. Not in the morning.
Yeah.
I did have one thing that's not rapid fire that I just wanted to make sure that it got brought up at some point. But your Eldon project, and Ryan went to NAU.
Oh,
so I was trying to place like where that was. I was like watching the video, and that one was particularly interesting to me. I used to live in Flagstaff as well.
Yeah.
So all the reasons that like John was talking about in terms of why Flagstaff being landlocked.
Yep.
I just thought that was cool. You guys left Phoenix and are you planning on going beyond Arizona?
We do want to go beyond Arizona, but it's the area that John knows the most, and to do what we do and do it well, you need to have a deep level of expertise in the area and in the market. And John has a second home in Flagstaff, so he goes up there a lot.
Is he up in that area, the Eldon Hills area, like the East Flag?
I actually don't know. I just know.
That's where it is, right? Eldon Hills is by a country club off Country
Club? The road is Eldon. It's more downtown near the campus.
It actually reminded me, or I just in my mind, I created a little spot for it near your. Remember that duplex that you lived in?
Off Paseo del Flag.
Off Paseo del Flag, because you were talking about like the proximity of like Peter Jungle and
Oh, so it's right up
It's
there
more-
for
Yeah.
like
yeah.
Lone
Like-
Tree.
Yes.
Yes.
It's in that
Okay.
area.
right.
Okay.
So that's where I was picturing it.
Fairly
That
short
was-
walk downtown to the downtown cool
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah,
that was
that's
cool.
cool.
The way that you had like the rustic angle on that, right? It
Yep.
was very different than what you guys have been doing down here.
yeah.
Well, they revived that area hugely too. So anyways, all right.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much. Thanks, Trisha. Thank you, Trey. I almost said Dylan because that's the other guy. Thanks, Trey. And again, thank you to VIP for having us and allowing us to do that here or do this here. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. Go to YouTube, please. We need likes and subscribers. That's the only way we can keep this going, right? So we need to be able to have people check it out. So thank you.
LinkedIn. Remember,
Yeah.
we're
sorry.
trying to pick
We're
up our-
evolving.
our
We're-
LinkedIn
Our LinkedIn
game.
is. Our LinkedIn
You're getting
game is
serious.
happening.
You got
We
LinkedIn.
are. I mean, we're very business. So, anyways, thanks again, and everybody, go check this one out. Appreciate it. Real Talk is brought to you by Escrow. The letter S, grow. Disorganization and constant communication are huge problems in the real estate journey. And it's an issue that I think most real estate agents, well, at least some real estate agents, struggle with in their CRM systems. There's a lot of options out there, and a lot of people have different ones. And when I'm speaking with the agents that we work with or that are our referral partners, the big hurdle is the actual creation of the templates and actually creating the automation that goes out for milestones. So Escrow kind of takes all that away. So everything's pre-written for you. You have multiple choices to go from, to choose from, I'm sorry. So if you're looking for a CRM system that is super easy to use and will eliminate a lot of the confusion and the heavy lifting up front, go to escrow.com, the letter S, grow.com.
VIP Mortgage Incorporated does business in accordance with the Federal Fair Lending Laws, NMLS ID 145502. For state-specific licensing, please visit www.vipmtginc.com/national-licenses/. VIP is not acting on behalf of or at the direction of the FHA, HUD, or the federal government. VIP is an equal housing lender.